Our ancestors were not primitive. They were not savages, huddled in caves, ruled by superstition. They were survivors. And across the globe, they left us a message, not in a book that could be burned, not on a tablet that could be broken, but in silent, colossal stones that could outlast empires. We see them as useless things. Crude tombs, strange ritual sites, or random piles of rock. We visit them as tourists and wonder at their mystery. But what if they were something far more sophisticated? What if these megaliths were not just individual structures, but the scattered components of a vast and ancient machine? A machine built not just to track the seasons for planting and harvest, but to calculate immense, terrifying cycles of cosmic time. A computer made of stone, designed by a lost civilization for one ultimate, terrifying purpose: to predict the end of their world and to warn us about the end of ours. If you believe our ancestors knew more than we give them credit for, subscribe and join us as we decode humanity's first computer. To understand the machine, we must first learn its basic operating language. The sun. Our journey begins in Ireland, at a site far older than the pyramids, Newgrange. From the outside, it is a massive circular mound of earth and stone. For centuries, it was believed to be just a tomb for ancient kings. But it holds a secret that reveals its true purpose. For 364 days a year, the central chamber in Newgrange is one of the darkest places on Earth. But on the morning of the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, something incredible happens. As the sun rises, a single, precise beam of golden light pierces a small opening above the entranceway, a roof box. This beam travels down a long, narrow stone passage, and for about 17 minutes, it illuminates the entire central chamber in a breathtaking display of astronomical engineering. This is not an accident. It is a clock, a perfect 5,000-year-old alarm clock, built to signal the exact moment of the sun's rebirth and the turning of the seasons. Hundreds of miles away, at Stonehenge in England, we see the same principle on a grander scale. The entire monument is famously aligned to the sunrise on the summer solstice and the sunset on the winter solstice. The great stones act as a celestial viewfinder, a massive lens to frame the movements of our star. These sites, and countless others like them, are the undeniable proof of concept. They establish, without a doubt, that the builders were not just piling up rocks. They were expert astronomers, capable of incredible precision. They were using stone and shadow to create solar engines, machines synchronized with the fundamental rhythm of our world. But tracking the sun was only the beginning. Their true genius and their true purpose lay in tracking a much more complex and elusive celestial body. Tracking the sun is one thing. Mapping the much more complicated path of the moon is another entirely. The moon's cycle is not simple. It has a wobble in its orbit that causes its rising and setting points on the horizon to shift over a long and difficult-to-observe period of 18.6 years. For any ancient culture to track this, it would require meticulous, multi-generational observation and a way to record that data over decades. And yet, the evidence is written in stone. At the Callanish Stones on the Isle of Lewis in Scotland, a magnificent stone circle forms a complex astronomical calculator. Research has shown that its long stone avenues are not just aligned to the sun, but precisely frame the moon at its most extreme southern rising point, an event that only happens once every 18.6 years. In Carnac, France, we see thousands of megaliths arranged in long, mysterious rows. For centuries, their purpose was unknown. But now, many researchers believe these rows form a massive lunar observatory, a stone computer for predicting not only the 18.6-year cycle, but also the timing of eclipses. This is a profound leap in complexity. This is no longer about when the plant crops. This is long-term, abstract, scientific research. These megalith builders were not just farmers. They were data analysts. They were operating on a timescale that extended far beyond a single human lifetime. And it begs the question, why invest centuries of labor to track such a long, obscure cycle? The answer may be that the 18.6-year cycle was just a small calculation, a test run for tracking a cycle that was far, far longer and infinitely more important. Our investigation now takes us to a timescale that is almost impossible to comprehend. It is called the precession of the equinoxes or the Great Year. It is a slow, 26,000-year wobble of the Earth's axis as it spins through space. Over this vast cycle, our North Star changes, and the constellation that rises with the sun on the spring equinox slowly shifts. To track this requires an almost godlike perspective of time. And yet, in southern Turkey, we find a site that seems to do just that, Göbekli Tepe, dated to an astonishing 9,600 BC. It is by far the oldest megalithic site ever discovered, built 7,000 years before Stonehenge. It is a complex of massive, T-shaped pillars, intricately carved with animals and symbols. For years, it was a complete mystery. But recent analysis has revealed a stunning possibility. The entire site appears to be a massive astronomical observatory, oriented not just to the sun, but to the rising of specific stars, particularly Sirius. More incredibly, the layout of the main enclosure seems to map the constellations of the zodiac, and their alignment tracks the precession of the equinoxes itself. This changes everything. A society of supposed hunter-gatherers 11,000 years ago was not just mapping the sun and moon, they were mapping the great year. Why would a culture need to know where our planet's axis is pointing in a cycle that takes 26,000 years to complete? There's only one logical and terrifying reason. Because something had happened or was predicted to happen at a specific point within that great cycle. And at Göbekli Tepe, we find a stone that seems to record that very event. Among the many carved pillars at Göbekli Tepe, one stands out. Pillar 43, known today as the Vulture Stone. It appears to be a chaotic collection of animal carvings, a scorpion, a bird, and a prominent, menacing vulture. For years, it was assumed to be a depiction of a hunting scene or a burial ritual. But a groundbreaking analysis by researchers from the University of Edinburgh proposed a different, far more shocking interpretation. They argue that the Vulture Stone is not a picture of animals. It is a star map, a celestial timestamp. The animals they found correspond perfectly to the constellations of the zodiac. The scorpion is Scorpio, the bird is Pisces, and so on. The vulture, they believe, represents the constellation Sagittarius, and the circle held in its wing represents the sun. The position of these constellations on the stone is not random. It marks a specific date, approximately 10,950 BC. And this date is one of the most important in prehistory. It is the exact date that a cataclysmic event known as the Younger Dryas began, a sudden and brutal return to Ice Age conditions that wiped out megafauna and likely decimated early human populations. The cause of this event has long been debated, but a leading theory is the impact of a comet swarm, specifically the Taurid meteor stream, which the Earth passes through every year. The Vulture Stone, this theory concludes, is a memorial. It is a message from the survivors. They carved into stone the exact date of the catastrophe, using the stars as a celestial clock. They were telling us, this is what the sky looked like on the day the world ended. The megalithic computer was not just a clock. It was a tombstone for a lost world. Let us assemble the evidence. Our journey has shown us that ancient megalithic sites were not useless relics. They were components of a sophisticated astronomical machine, a machine that could track the sun, calculate the long cycles of the moon, and even map the 26,000-year precession of the equinoxes. And at the oldest and most mysterious of these sites, we find not a celebration of the heavens, but a stark, terrifying warning, a detailed record of cosmic impact that caused a global cataclysm, a great winter that plunged the world back into darkness. This forces us to reevaluate the entire purpose of this global, multi-generational project. Were these thousands of stone circles, dolmens, and passage tombs just memorials to a past tragedy? Or were they something more? Were they a desperate attempt by the survivors of a global catastrophe to create a permanent planetary warning system? A doomsday clock made of stone and aligned to the stars, designed to help future generations, us, recognize the celestial patterns, track the movement of comet swarms, and understand the great cycles of destruction and renewal. Perhaps they didn't build these things because they were primitive. Perhaps they built them because they were far wiser than we are. They had seen the world end once before, and they spent the next 7,000 years building a computer, a clock, a warning, in a desperate hope that when the cosmic signs appear in the sky again, we would be smart enough to look up